Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Ashley always believed that life was made up of phases, and at that moment, she was living through one of the most exciting ones. It all started when Mark, her husband, decided to invest in a bold project. For months, he dedicated himself day and night to creating an app. Ashley supported him in silence, making coffee in the early mornings, encouraging him whenever fatigue threatened to take over. She knew Mark was talented and had immense potential, but not even in her wildest dreams did she imagine what was about to happen. The app was launched and, within a few weeks, it became an enormous success. Businesspeople from everywhere wanted a piece of it. Negotiations were quick, and in the blink of an eye, Mark sold the project for an amount most people would never see in their lifetime, nearly $400 million. It was a radical change. They left their old modest yet cozy home and moved to a gated community known in the city for housing celebrities, powerful entrepreneurs, and wealthy families. It was a new world where everything seemed too big, too bright. Ashley was enchanted by this transformation. She felt like she was living in a movie. Wide streets, luxury cars parading around, giant houses with impeccable gardens. She found herself surrounded by people who exuded elegance, though they also carried a certain air of superiority. Everything was different from what she was used to, but she faced this change lightly, trying to adapt to her new social circle. One day, they received an invitation to a reception at Mr. Bennett's mansion, one of the most influential residents there. The invitation was practically a passport to being accepted into the social circle of that neighborhood, and Ashley saw it as an opportunity to get to know her new neighbors better. She chose a discreet yet elegant dress and went with Mark to the party. As soon as they arrived, she noticed how accustomed those people were to luxury. Conversations revolved around international trips, multi-million-dollar investments, and exclusive events. Ashley tried to keep up, smiling, paying attention, although she felt a bit out of place. She wandered through the house, meeting some faces, listening to stories about business and art collections. Mark, as always, remained reserved, more interested in talking about technology and future projects. Amidst the smiles and toasts, Ashley began to notice something strange. A young man, clearly younger than most of the guests, was watching her intently. His name was Carter, the host's son. She realized that every time she looked in his direction, he held her gaze, with a crooked smile and an arrogant gleam in his eyes. At first, she tried to ignore it. She thought he was just an immature guy, used to provoking looks for fun. But that started to bother her. Carter didn't limit himself to stares. He approached her discreetly, made whispered comments as he passed by her, complimented her perfume in a suggestive way, always with that air of superiority. It was as if he wasn't afraid of being seen by others. To him, this game of insinuations was a fun pastime. Ashley maintained her composure, trying to disguise her discomfort. She knew she was surrounded by influential people, and a scandal at that moment could bring immense embarrassment to Mark. So, with elegance, she distanced herself whenever Carter tried to get too close. She sought to stay beside other people, involved in group conversations, avoiding any situation where she might be isolated. What surprised her most was Carter's audacity. Even knowing she was Mark's wife, he didn't seem to care. On the contrary, the more she avoided him, the more he seemed to enjoy the situation. His look conveyed a dangerous confidence, as if he believed no one there would dare confront him. At that moment, Ashley began to realize something that wasn't so clear before. That place, despite all the luxury, had its own rules. Polished smiles hid veiled rivalries, and not everyone there was as polite as they seemed. Behind the glamorous parties, there was a power game where everyone sought an advantage over the other, and Carter seemed to have learned that early on. When the night came to an end, Ashley felt immense relief leaving that mansion. During the ride back home, she stayed silent, her thoughts swirling around everything that had happened. As much as she tried to convince herself that it had all been just the silly behavior of a spoiled boy, a sense of unease settled inside her. Carter didn't seem like the type to give up easily, and the look he gave her before she left the party was etched in her memory, like a silent warning that this episode was far from over. Ashley believed everything would be left behind after that uncomfortable night. She convinced herself that Carter had enjoyed the provocations, but that, once the party was over, he would lose interest. For a few days, she tried to keep busy with simple things, like organizing the new house, choosing furniture, arranging the garden, anything to distract her thoughts. It seemed to work, until her phone buzzed with an unexpected notification. Carter had started following her on social media. Her heart raced as soon as she saw his name there. For a moment, she considered blocking him immediately, but hesitated. She thought that doing so might fuel his obsession even more. She decided to ignore it, hoping it was just a passing curiosity. During the day, she avoided looking at her phone, but by late afternoon, when she opened it again, there was the first message. At first, Carter kept a polite tone. He complimented the dress she wore at the party and said she seemed different from the other women there. Ashley felt her stomach churn. This was going too far. She decided not to respond, believing silence would be enough to discourage him. However, the messages continued. He persisted, always with sweet words, as if trying to build a bond that never existed. When he saw she was ignoring him, his tone changed. The messages began to carry a disguised venom. He talked about the power his family had in the neighborhood, hinted that he could cause problems for Mark, mentioned how people there loved rumors and how a simple comment could ruin reputations. He said Ashley was smart enough to know that refusing his friendship could bring unpleasant consequences. With each message, she felt a chill in her soul. It was as if she was cornered inside her own home. Surrounded by luxury and comfort, fear followed her in every corner. During breakfast, she looked at Mark and wanted to tell him everything, but she stayed silent. She preferred to avoid worries, especially now that Mark was excited about new business opportunities in the neighborhood. She feared he would react impulsively and ruin everything. Time passed, and Carter's messages became more aggressive. Now he made it clear he knew where she was, mentioning the places she frequented, as if he followed her from afar. He said that if she dared to tell anyone, he wouldn't think twice before spreading stories that could destroy Mark's image. Ashley began living in constant vigilance. Before leaving the house, she looked around, trying to predict if she would run into Carter somewhere. She avoided going to the market alone, canceled appointments at the beauty salon, and when she needed to go out, she always sought the company of a neighbor, even if only to disguise her fear. The worst happened on an ordinary day when she returned from the gym. As soon as she parked the car, her phone vibrated. The message was short but full of threat. Carter wrote that she was brave for continuing to ignore him, but that everything had a limit. He said he was ready to show her how he could make things even more complicated, making it clear he was nearby. Ashley froze. She felt her hands go cold, her body trembling. She looked around, searching for any sign that he was there. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every little noise in the house, as if something was about to happen at any moment. The next day, she decided to delete the social media app and lock all her accounts. She also deleted Carter's number, trying to eliminate any means of contact. But that wasn't enough to calm her heart. The feeling of being watched was still present. She could no longer pretend it was something small. Anguish consumed every gesture, every thought. One morning, after another sleepless night, she looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized her reflection. She was worn out, with deep dark circles and a faded look. She realized this was no longer a matter of pride or maintaining harmony. It was a matter of safety, of preserving her sanity. She knew that if she didn't act soon, she could lose control of everything. From that moment, she made a decision. It was time to tell the truth, no matter the cost. Ashley took a deep breath before opening the door to the office where Mark worked. She found him focused, reviewing some contracts. For a moment, she thought about postponing, but she knew she had no choice. Her voice came out low and shaky as she asked him to stop what he was doing because she needed to tell him something important. Mark noticed her tone and closed his laptop immediately. Without asking questions, he waited attentively. Ashley began to speak, her heart racing. She revealed every detail, from the looks at the party to the messages that tormented her day and night. She told him about the threats, about how Carter knew all the places she frequented, and how he used his family's prestige as a weapon to intimidate her. With every word, Mark kept his gaze fixed on her, without interrupting. Ashley showed him the evidence on her phone, the saved messages, the notifications, everything she had kept silent during that torment. When she finished, she waited for an explosion of anger, but what she saw was different. Mark was calm, with an expression that mixed sadness and focus. He didn't let himself be overcome by rage. On the contrary, he said she had done the right thing by telling him. Without hesitation, he took her phone and transferred all the messages and screenshots to his email, organizing everything meticulously. Mark then hugged her, a simple gesture but full of meaning. It was as if he was saying, without words, that from then on, she wouldn't need to carry that weight alone anymore. Afterward, he asked her to stay home and take care of herself, as he would handle the situation. Ashley tried to argue, fearing he would confront Carter directly, but Mark assured her he knew exactly what to do. The next morning, Mark went to Mr. Bennett's mansion. He requested a private conversation and was promptly received since he was already seen in the neighborhood as a man of influence. Without beating around the bush, he laid everything out clearly. He showed the messages, explained the harassment, the threats, every detail. He spoke firmly but without raising his voice, making it clear he was there to protect his wife and wouldn't tolerate any attempt at intimidation. Mr. Bennett was shocked. Seeing the evidence, his face changed. The embarrassment and shame were evident as he realized his own son had caused such a situation. He remained silent for a few minutes, absorbing everything. Then, with a dry tone, he thanked Mark for bringing the issue directly to him. He said he would resolve it immediately. Mark left without any sense of victory. He knew the problem was too serious to allow any premature celebration. He preferred to remain cautious and wait. He returned home in silence, still absorbing the weight of everything that had happened. That night, however, the walls of the neighboring mansion seemed unable to contain the screams. Carter's father, completely beside himself, lost all composure. His voice echoed through the hallways, and even neighbors farther away heard snippets of the argument. He demanded explanations, and harsh words piled up. He accused his son of shame, irresponsibility, and dishonoring the family name. In front of the frightened eyes of the employees, the father revealed that this wasn't the first time Carter had gotten into embarrassing situations. There were other hidden stories, other victims of his reckless actions, and he himself had covered up previous mistakes to avoid scandals. This time, however, there would be no protection. Without hesitation, the father announced the definitive cutting of all privileges. The generous allowance was cancelled on the spot. The imported cars that Carter proudly paraded around the neighborhood were taken to the family garage, locked up, and the keys confiscated. Trips, parties, access to the exclusive club in the area, all were suspended immediately. No plea was heard. The father was determined and made it clear that the only way out for Carter would be military boarding school, located in another state, a place known among discreet circles of wealthy families for applying strict discipline, extreme physical training, and an austere routine, created specifically to re-educate rebellious and undisciplined young men. The decision was announced in front of everyone, with no room for appeals or excuses. Carter, pale and in shock, listened in silence, unable to argue in the face of his father's unshakable fury. The residents, used to seeing spoiled young people escape unscathed from their mistakes, were astonished by the severity of the punishment. For many, it was the first time they witnessed a case where an influential father actually applied a serious consequence, without using his power to cover up or soften the problem. Meanwhile, Mark remained silent. He knew that behind the whispers and shock, there was something much more important than social repercussions. His family was safe, and their integrity remained intact. For him, that was the only result that mattered. Ashley heard the news a few hours later. The relief was immediate, but what struck her most was Mark's demeanor throughout the entire process. He hadn't sought revenge, only justice. He protected his family with intelligence and dignity, without making a scene. She began to see her husband with even more admiration, recognizing the quiet strength he had always carried. The days that followed brought peace. Ashley resumed her activities, started circulating around the neighborhood again, but with a different attitude. She felt safer, more confident. The respect Mark earned there spread, and many neighbors began treating them differently, not just because of the money they had, but because of the integrity they demonstrated. Inside the house, the atmosphere changed. What was once an environment marked by tension and fear was now a space of even greater complicity. Ashley and Mark rediscovered the importance of dialogue, mutual protection, and the courage to face delicate situations. What seemed like just a nightmare turned into a lesson about respect, dignity, and the true value of a safe home. But what no one expected happened days later. During a walk in the neighborhood square, Ashley crossed paths with Mr. Bennett. He stopped in front of her, apologized once again, but made a revelation that left her speechless. He said that while investigating Carter's behavior, he discovered this wasn't the first time his son had acted this way. Several young women had been victims of harassment, but none had the courage to expose the truth. Ashley, by breaking the silence, unknowingly became the reason other families were freed from a similar torment. She returned home with a lump in her throat, moved to realize that her action, initially motivated only by desperation, ended up being a turning point for that entire place. She looked at Mark, hugged him without saying a word, and for the first time in a long time, felt that, no matter how much luxury life offered, true wealth was having someone by her side who, even in the face of the worst, chose the right path. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.